What would you do if you overheard your own downfall being planned? I still remember Vincent's voice low, certain, a little too calm to belong to someone talking about a living, breathing employee. I had walked back into the office for my forgotten phone. The hallway dim, except for the glow under the conference room door. I heard my name, and that's what made me pause. By the next quarter, Vincent was saying, "We'll phase Elara out. Too independent. She's holding the product hostage." The investor laughed, the sound short and sharp. "She built the engine, didn't she?" Vincent replied. "Yes, but the code's already in-house. Once we replicate it, we'll be fine." That sentence hit harder than any insult could have. Replicate it. As if the years of unpaid nights, the thousands of lines of neural architecture I'd written alone, could just be copied. I stayed there, listening until their voices blurred into static in my head. Then I turned, walked to my desk, and sat down. I opened my laptop, stared at the running logs of the system I'd built, and began to plan. When my coworker Darren stopped by and asked if I was joining them for lunch, I said quietly, "No, not today." He didn't ask why. Most people at Electrosystems had already learned not to ask questions that might involve Vincent. That night, at home, I opened a fresh notebook, the kind with numbered pages, and wrote the date in block letters. Under it, I made the first entry: proof of Origin Genesis core developed independently between March and September 2019. Personal equipment only. My hand trembled once, then steadied. The anger was still there, but it had shifted. I no longer wanted to confront him. I wanted documentation. By midnight, the plan was taking shape, quiet, deliberate, built with the same precision as every system I'd ever written. 7 months. That's how long I gave myself. And when the time came, Vincent would learn what it meant to underestimate the woman he'd tried to erase. How do you prove something the world already believes belongs to someone else? The morning after I overheard Vincent, I arrived before anyone else. The office lights were still off, the servers humming like they always did when no one was listening. I opened my laptop and began pulling every version of my code from backup drives, copying them to a private external server. Each folder got a timestamp, each line of code a note, my initials, the date, the location. By noon, the office filled with noise. Derek, my former intern, walked by holding 2 coffees. "Big meeting today," he said, smirking. "Vincent wants a demo for investors. I'm sure you'll make it shine," I said, keeping my voice even. He hesitated. "You're not in the deck this time. He wants me to lead." I nodded, pretending to be fine. Inside, I was memorizing every word. That evening, I opened my old livestream account, the one I'd used years ago when I coded through nights fueled by instant noodles and fear of failure. The videos were still there. My voice, explaining neural mapping models line by line, time-stamped months before Electrosystems even existed. Proof, hidden in plain sight. I downloaded every stream, every file, every chat log where other developers asked questions, and I answered under my username, Elara Quinn. At 2 in the morning, I started scanning invoices, equipment I'd bought with my own credit card long before I was hired, the high-performance GPU, the personal cloud subscription, the ergonomic keyboard I'd used until the letters wore off. Each receipt went into a folder marked Personal Resources Non-Corporate. When the files reached 3 gigabytes, I backed them up again, on an encrypted drive stored in my freezer beneath a bag of blueberries. I laughed softly at the absurdity of it, hiding my life's work beside frozen fruit. The fear I'd felt the day before had cooled into something steadier. I wasn't just documenting. I was building a case, line by line, like a system only I could architect. And soon. I'd need someone who knew exactly how to make it bulletproof. What if the law could be your quietest weapon? I met Marina Locke in a downtown cafe that smelled like rain and burnt espresso. She arrived carrying a laptop bag and a calm that made me instantly trust her. When she spoke, her voice was low and measured, like someone who spent her life dissecting the fine print of other people's arrogance. "I've reviewed your contract," she said, sliding her glasses higher on her nose. "You signed as a contractor before your employment began, correct?" I nodded. 3 months before Electrosystems was officially registered. She smiled slightly. "Then, the company owns what you built using company resources during assigned hours. The key phrase, Elara, is during assigned hours. You created the core framework before you had any—" I felt a pulse of disbelief. "You mean, legally? It's still mine." "Not just legally," she said, provably. "You documented everything. It's immaculate." She paused, eyes flicking across the screen. "You're meticulous rare in people who get betrayed." I laughed softly. Obsession has its uses. Marina leaned forward. "You need to protect the work now, before they realize what they've signed. Incorporate a holding entity, something clean. We'll call it Quinn Axiom LLC. Assign the intellectual property to it, backdated to when the code was written. Entirely lawful." I stared at the draft articles of incorporation as she typed, my name beside founder and chief technical officer. The words steadied me. "And what happens when they discover it?" I asked. "They won't," Marina said, eyes glinting. "Because they'll sign it again. We'll bury the acknowledgement clause in your next compliance documentation. Page 267, subsection C, dense, technical, invisible to an executive who believes he's smarter than everyone in the room." Her tone was clinical, almost detached, but I felt something electric beneath it, precision disguised as patience. As we stood to leave, she added quietly, "You're not taking revenge. Elara, you're restoring balance. For the first time in weeks." I felt the air ease inside my chest. That night, I began rewriting the document that would change everything. How do you watch someone sign away their empire with a single pen stroke? Friday afternoons at Electrosystems always smelled like espresso and deadlines. Vincent Hale hated staying past 5, so anything that required his signature had to be dropped on his desk before his weekend rounds of golf. I waited outside his glass office, holding the thick compliance packet that contained my heartbeat on page 267. "Come in," he said without looking up. His jacket was already off. Tie loosened. "Is that the Department of Defense documentation?" "Yes," I said evenly. "Routine certification update." Marina confirmed it aligns with the new version. Vincent nodded. "Good. Leave it here. I'll sign before I go." He flipped the first few pages, then scrawled his signature fast, practiced, uninterested. My stomach tightened. "Need me to witness?" I asked, pretending to glance at my watch. He grinned. "Sure. Why not? Makes it official." He kept signing, pen scratching through pages that took me 2 weeks to perfect. I could see his reflection in the glass, relaxed, confident, utterly unaware. When he reached the middle of the packet, he paused. "This looks different from last quarter." "Formatting updates?" I said quickly. "New security protocol layout. Legal wanted it standardized." "Fine," he said, and kept signing. His phone buzzed twice. Each time, he answered without stopping. I watched him initial the final page of Section 8.7, the one Marina had drafted word for word. Foundational architecture developed by Elara Quinn between March and September 2019 on personal equipment remains the intellectual property of the developer. He signed directly beneath it. "Good work. Elara," he said, capping his pen. "We'll need your team ready for the investor demo next week." "Of course," I replied. My voice didn't shake, though my hands ached too. As I left his office, I memorized the last motion of his wrist, the flourish that sealed his own fate. By the time the elevator doors closed, I had already texted Marina a single word. Done. What's worse, losing your work or watching others take credit for it? The first thing to disappear was my name. It vanished from the internal build notes 2 weeks after Vincent signed the document, then from the slide decks, then from the product roadmap. By the 3rd week, Derek was presenting my algorithms as a collaborative evolution under his leadership. He caught me outside the conference room one morning, his face red with excitement. The investors loved the demo, he said. Vincent said the system finally feels stable. I looked at him. That's because I built it stable. He laughed nervously. Yeah, of course. But, you know, I refined it. I wanted to tell him refinement meant changing 2 color themes and breaking 1 integration. But I didn't. I just nodded, watching him run off to a meeting I used to lead. That afternoon, my badge stopped granting me access to the testing environment. It claimed it was a permissions refresh. When I asked Vincent, he smiled. Standard process. Elara, you're moving into more of an advisory role. Without system access, I said. He didn't answer. By the end of the month, I was sitting at my desk surrounded by people who wouldn't look at me. Conversations ended when I entered the kitchen. The new interns whispered my name like it belonged to a ghost story. Marina called late one night. You're quiet, she said. I'm watching them erase me in real time. I replied. Good, she said softly. Let them. Every keystroke they make now builds on what you legally own. They're writing your proof for you. I held on to her words the next morning when HR requested an updated job description. We're restructuring, Amanda said, avoiding eye contact. Nothing personal. I smiled, signing the form. Of course. Nothing ever is. That evening, I packed the last of my things, 1 notebook, 1 mug, a flash drive that no one noticed had been in my drawer since the beginning. I shut down my computer, feeling the silence stretch around me. They thought they were cutting me out. In truth, they were setting the fuse. If you knew the exact moment you'd be fired, how would you spend the night before the email arrived at 8:47 p.m. Mandatory meeting, conference room Aurora, 9:30 a.m. I stared at the screen for a full minute before closing it. No surprise, no panic, only a clock starting to tick. I opened my terminal and ran a final system check. Credential monitor active, patent scripts queued, licensing notifications verified. Every response line blinked green. Marina's voice echoed in my head from our last call. When the lights go out, Elara, let the system speak for you. I poured myself a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago and sat by the window. The city outside looked quiet, like nothing was about to change. I thought about the years I had given this company the nights without sleep, the birthdays I missed, the apologies I never sent. For a moment, the anger softened. Then I remembered Vincent's voice saying phase her out, and the calm returned sharper than before. My phone buzzed. A message from Marina: all filings are synced. If they revoke access, the timer begins. I typed back, understood. See you on the other side, at 1 e. I shut my laptop, cleared my desk, and left only the essentials in my bag, my ID badge, my notebook, and a flash drive with the backups. By dawn, I was already dressed, navy suit, hair pulled back, eyes steady. I walked through the quiet streets toward the office, the air damp with morning rain. At my desk, I opened a clean page in my notebook and wrote 1 line in block letters. 9:30, end of 1 story, start of another. The office lights flickered on. Around me, keyboards began to clatter, phones rang, small talk filled the air. No one noticed the countdown that had already begun. At 9:15, I took a slow sip of my second coffee and looked at the clock. 15 minutes left. My system was ready. My body was calm. My replacement, somewhere upstairs, was probably rehearsing his lines. How do you keep your hands from shaking when someone steals your life to your face? At 9:30 sharp, I walked into conference room Aurora. The blinds were half closed, the light thin and gray. Amanda from HR sat at the end of the table, a folder already open. Vincent Hale stood by the window, pretending to be busy with his phone. Elara, he said, forcing a smile. Thanks for coming on short notice. I sat down, placing my notebook neatly on the table. Of course. You said it was important. Amanda cleared her throat. This will be brief. The company has decided to move in a new direction. Effective immediately, your employment with Electra Systems is terminated. She began reading a paragraph about property returns, non-disclosure obligations, and severance review. I could hear the rehearsed sympathy in her tone. Vincent stepped closer, voice softened. This isn't personal, Elara. You've made significant contributions, but the board believes the next phase needs fresh leadership. I looked up at him. You mean Derek? He hesitated, then nodded. He's done great work integrating your framework. My framework, I repeated quietly. He shifted, uncomfortable. You'll receive final paperwork by end of day. Amanda slid the envelope toward me. Security will assist with your departure. As her words faded, my phone vibrated once in my pocket. 9:31. Access revoked. I signed the form without reading it. You have everything you need. Then Vincent smiled faintly. Yes. Thank you for handling this professionally. I rose slowly, collecting my notebook. I always do. By the time I reached the elevator, the second vibration came 9:32. The cascade had begun. 43 patent filings, automatic notifications, and licensing activations, all moving silently through encrypted channels. Luis, one of the security guards, waited near the doors. I'm sorry, Ms. Quinn, he said quietly. I smiled at him. Don't be. You're just doing your job. The elevator doors closed. My hands were steady. My system was alive. Upstairs, they thought they'd erased me. They had no idea they'd just triggered my beginning. What's 17 minutes worth when 5 years of work are on the line? At 9:47, I was standing in line at the cafe across the street, holding a cup that had gone cold before I even paid for it. My phone buzzed once. A text from Marina Live. The word felt heavier than any sentence she could have written. Inside Electra Systems, the cascade was unfolding exactly as planned. Build queues were freezing, license verifications failing. My former team was probably staring at screens flashing access denied, wondering why the foundation they stood on had suddenly vanished. Another buzz. Marina again. Patent confirmations filed. 43 complete. I exhaled slowly. Around me, no one knew that the intellectual property once buried under Electra's name now belonged to Quinn Axiom, LLC, valued at over $500 million. My life's work had come home. At 9:51, my phone rang. Vincent. I let it ring. At 9:53. Again. At 9:55. Amanda from HR. I silenced it. By 10. I'd barely sat down when the cafe door burst open. Vincent Hale, hair disheveled, face pale, spotted me immediately. He walked straight to my table. Elara, he said, voice cracking. We have a serious issue. Our systems, everything's locked. The builds won't deploy. I looked up. Then you should probably read your compliance documents. Page 267, subsection C. His eyes flickered. You tricked me. No, I said softly. You signed without reading. That's not the same thing. He dropped into the chair across from me. You've sabotaged us. This is corporate theft. It's ownership. I corrected. 5 years of unpaid nights. Code written before you even had a company. You just never noticed who built your empire. Vincent's phone buzzed again. The screen lighting with names I recognized: investors, journalists, panic. He looked at me, voice lower now. What do you want? Nothing, I said. I already have it. He sat back, defeated. At 10:03, I received one final message from Marina. Congratulations. Found her. I raised my cup, taking a slow sip. The coffee was cold, but the victory burned warm enough. How do you negotiate with someone who finally realizes what you're worth? 2 days after the cafe confrontation, Vincent requested a meeting. He didn't say please, but his tone had lost all its polish. Marina and I arrived first, sitting across a long glass table in a conference room borrowed from her firm. She poured herself water, calm as a surgeon before an operation. Vincent entered, carrying a folder that looked heavier than paper should. His tie was gone, his eyes hollow. "Elara," he began, "we're willing to discuss terms." "Then let's discuss," I said. He hesitated. "We need the systems back online immediately. Our investors." 30% of gross revenue, I said. Attribution on every patent, release note, and investor document. Full acknowledgement of ownership. Immediate restoration of the license under Quinn Axiom LLC. He blinked. 30%. "That's absurd." "Absurd," Marina said quietly, "is using someone's property for 5 years without paying for it." Vincent's mouth tightened. "You could ruin us." "I could," I said, "but I'd rather get paid." He flipped open his folder, voice cracking under the weight of the numbers. "We can offer 8%, capped at $50 million. Marina didn't speak. She just looked at me. I leaned forward. "You'll keep every engineer employed. Your product won't collapse. Your investors will calm down. You'll pay 30% no cap. I'm not here to destroy Electra. I'm here to make sure it finally values what built it." Vincent rubbed his temples. "You're asking for a lifetime share. I'm asking for fairness." Silence filled the room. Finally, he looked at Marina. "You're not going to give an inch, are you?" "She doesn't have to," Marina replied. "You already signed once." He stared at the paper in front of him for a long time. Then he picked up the pen. This time, he read every word. When he finished, he set the pen down and whispered, "You win." I shook my head. "No, Vincent, I just stopped losing." Marina collected the signed document and slipped it into her briefcase. For the first time, I allowed myself to breathe. What does victory look like when you no longer need applause? 6 months later, the office of Axiom Technologies was small but alive. The walls hummed with energy. Not ego. Half the engineers were people Electra had overlooked: quiet builders, problem solvers, minds that never made it onto slide decks. We worked long hours, but they were our hours. Every contract, every patent, every commit carried a name beside it. Vincent's firm survived. They paid their 30% on time, every quarter. Sometimes I'd see his name in industry articles, all softened by words like partnership and settlement. Marina sent me the payment confirmations without comment. We didn't need to talk about him anymore. One afternoon, a young developer named Sonia stopped by my desk. She was new, barely 23, hair pulled into a nervous knot. "Can I ask something?" she said. "Always." I replied. "What do I do if someone takes credit for my work? Not this team, but anywhere. If it happens." I closed my laptop. "You document everything. You keep your logs, your messages, your drafts. And when they try to erase you, you'll already have proof that you existed." She nodded slowly. "That's what you did, isn't it?" "Yes," I said, "but it's better if you never have to." That night, after everyone left, I stayed behind. The office was quiet except for the hum of servers running code I owned in name and soul. I thought of the years at Electra, of the humiliation, the silence, the moment my badge went dead, and how all of it had led here. Marina called just before midnight. "Your quarterly transfer cleared," she said. I smiled. "Good. Let's use it for the mentorship fund." She paused, still giving it away. "Not giving," I said softly. "Investing. In people who deserve better." After the call, I looked at the glowing screens one last time before turning out the lights. The code, the company, the story. It was all mine now, and for the first time, that felt like enough.